How would you like the competitive advantage next year? Now, what we're going to do in this video is we're going to take a passion of mine, which is sport, and we're going to bring it and incorporate it into business. We're going to use some well-researched and applied strategies that Olympic athletes use to peak at the right time and sustain that for a longer period of time. And we're going to bring that into the corporate environment. By taking this approach, you will avoid burnout, fatigue, and overload for you and the rest of your team. In a really competitive environment that it is at the moment for talent, what we know is all our employees are being asked to do more with less. We're being squeezed and squeezed like never before. So these strategies from sport, bringing them into business is really going to give you the competitive advantage when we're looking at finding the right talent and also maintaining your talent at the moment. To avoid burnout and fatigue, athletes use a term called periodization. Now, periodization is the division of your annual training plan over the course of a year. So if you have a look at maybe your training plan, your team plan, division plan, maybe even your company plan, and divide that up over the year, identifying when the peaks and troughs of the year are, what that will do is that is the start of a plan when we're looking at your loads, your intensity, workloads, stress. If we know this, then we can actually put things in place, which I'll show you in a minute. If we have a look at the board behind me, what we have is we've got cycles, and it's really important to understand these cycles. So we have macro cycles, which is your whole year view. Then we have mesocycles, which are quarter to quarter. And then we have your micro, which are your week. They could even be your day. So day-to-day routines. If we have a look here, this is taken from one of my teams that I used to train in the Air Force, and it was a ski team. So what we have here, we have got readiness on the upwards, and then we've got the whole year. So we've got the time along the bottom. Now, what we've done is we've broken this down into 4 phases. So we got the first phase, which is all conditioning. Then we've got the transition phase in preparation for the competition. We got some rest and recovery at the end. Then the cycle happens again. Now, within this whole cycle, we had a summer camp. So we needed to peak for the summer season. I know it sounds bizarre, but we're in the Alps. So we've got a summer competition, and then we actually have the main peak, which is the winter. And as you can see on here, the readiness scale, we're not going to be ready right at the start of the season, but if we know that, what we can do is we can peak at the right time. So if we have a look at the conditioning, so the conditioning phase for my athletes, it was at high volume. So we're looking at longer runs, we're looking at lighter workloads, as in weights and things like that, but longer runs, not looking at any sprints or hill reps or anything like that just yet. That went on for a couple of months. Then we had the transition. So we're looking at lowering the load itself. So shorter workouts, but higher intensity. So we're looking at interval training. We're looking at hill repetitions. We're looking at some weight exercises to really prepare the athletes for the competition phase. And, there were sport specific movements as well. So we're actually honing all of the different muscles to make sure that when we're in this competition phase, we are focused on what we need to do. So the bulk of our physiology is being done. So we're physically ready, and then we can start working on our mind. We can start working on all those little movements and techniques as the workload, the load is actually dropped off. But then it's really important after is to have some active recovery and some rest before then we start the next cycle, which is in towards the winter season. And what you can actually see already, we've actually got just on here, we've got a higher start base for the second half of the season. Now, because we actually had this, we had less injuries as a result, less fatigue and overload, and it was amazing. People were peaking at the right time, pretty much every time. Now, you don't have, as a leader of an organization, you do not have Olympic athletes, okay? But you have corporate athletes. The corporate athlete is different. We have higher cognitive stresses and higher cognitive load within your team members, which we actually have to manage. So it's not physical, it's more of that cognitive load that we're talking about. What we need to do is we need to identify the peaks and troughs of their year. If it's in finance, for example, I've done some work within corporate organizations. We have distinct peaks. We know when it's going to be really busy, and we may have to work to 9, 10 at night at the end of the tax year, for example, or at the end of each month. If we know that, then we know for a fact that we can do, that we're prepared for those peaks. And then after that, we can rest, recover, train, and we can get going for the next one. It's when this happens within organizations, this red line is we have our onboarding, and we get, and our organization, our business wants us to get up to speed, up to intensity and readiness as quick as possible. And guess what? We have to maintain that all the way throughout the whole year. And then we have our 2 weeks at Christmas, and it drops off a cliff. And guess what I've seen in the run up to Christmas is there's a lot of people being sick because their bodies are just shutting down, because we've been working at maximum capacity for such a long period of time. Your body can't sustain that. Think about this as an athlete. If I asked you to run as fast as you can for as long as you can, there will come a point in which you will slow down, and you'll start getting fatigue and burning out pretty much. So you can't sustain that for a long period of time. It's no different to the corporate athlete. The cognitive workload is, if I ask you to do the same, but mentally, you would, it will come to a point in which you'll be dropping off, and then you'll become sick as your immune system becomes low. Your cortisol and adrenaline is pumping, which isn't a good thing for your nervous system and your immune system for a long period of time. So what does this mean for organizations? So we know what the benefits. So the benefits here, right? So if you're able to incorporate periodization within maybe your team or you, or business units, we're going to be able to manage stress. So rather than working on people who are already burnt out, we can put things in place before to manage stress. Okay, this is really important. You're going to maximize people's performance because they're going to be fresh. We're going to increase the endurance of your team, maintain the momentum as we go through, avoid burnout fatigue, maintain focus on the most important things we need to get done. You're going to reduce the mistakes because people are going to be rested. They're going to be ready to work at that peak level and the peak performance when it comes to it. And there'll be less absenteeism from work because people are not going to be sick. You're going to be actually managing your workloads. Now, what are my top tips? If you think around incorporating this into your organization, number one is you need to have a look at your annual plan. You need to identify when the peaks and troughs are and share them with your team, because then once they know that, what we can do, number two, is identify the peaks and troughs. Number three is then look at that for each individual and get each individual to create a bit of a resilience or stress management plan in which they are going to put in the conditioning phase. They're going to then look at the transition phase, and then, hey, we're in this competition phase. We're in this high intensity period in which we know it's going to be for 2 weeks. So we can work hard for 2 weeks. But then after that 2 weeks, we're going to rest, recover, and then start training again for us to then hit the next phase within that. And do that as a team and as an individual. And the last one there is be flexible, because things just come at you. Things like COVID, as an example, everyone working from home. We have to be able to maintain flexibility to be able to shift our focus as and when. So when we're looking at here, if an athlete gets injured, then what's going to happen? We're going to maybe miss this competition phase. So we're going to have a longer conditioning and longer transition phase for that individual to recover more from their injuries, rather than getting straight in and trying to jump in. That's when most injuries actually occur. My advice for you, if you are a leader, is you need to start varying the workloads. We need to start varying the intensity levels. So when we're looking at a week schedule, for example, we need to be able to say, hey, we're going to be high intensity this week, medium intensity next week, and then low intensity for the next week. Put in those expectations on your team members so that they know that then they won't have to be up here. And it's okay for you to have peaks and troughs, because that's how you manage and sustain peak performance for a longer period of time. What is the bottom line here? I don't see many businesses or organizations doing this. I always see the organizations working at the other end of the spectrum when people are burnt out, they're fatigued, they're overworked, they've got stress. Then they go and see employee assistance programs. We can be proactive and put measures in place with you, your team, and some of the individuals within there for them to shift the ownership, to manage maybe their own workloads, their own intensities. And look, flexibility is key. We know that things come in last minute and then we're unable to say no to. But it's actually programming in, using your diary really effectively to go, well, what phase are we in? When does it need to be done by? Because this will give you the competitive advantage in the workplace. It will ensure that you're getting the best possible results. People are engaged, that they're productive, they're managing their energy levels as we go through the whole year, not just days and years and 2 or 3 years. If you ask an Olympic athlete what they did to win the gold, it doesn't start, it doesn't start, 2 weeks before. It starts with really good planning, chunking it down into smaller chunks, periodization, and then working within these different cycles, as you can see behind me. And that is how you sustain peak performance.